building in general. During the last decade, actually, there was a tendency internationally toward localized peace building because maybe organizations started to understand. My voice is really, do you hear me? Good? Because
maybe 10% higher.
Yeah, okay, so I will raise it. Oh, we raise it on the mic as well. Okay, so it's good to yeah, so it's good they asked. So actually there was like more and more tendency towards localized peace building in post-conflict and conflict situations. The former UN Secretary General, Mr. Kofi Annan, said in 2004, and you can move the slide to this word once again. Yeah, just here. Yeah. So here I quote, due regard must be given to indigenous and informal traditions for administrating justice or settling disputes, to help them to continue their often vital role, and to do so in conformity with both international standards and local traditions. End of quote. The concepts of peace, human rights, peace building, all are typically viewed by the East as Western, foreign, liberal, not suitable for their culture or religion or traditions. Therefore, there is also a mistrust on the incentives and goals of the West behind their help. Actually, 2020 public survey by Arab Barometer on 11 countries asking about the motivations of the West behind their help. 42% of respondents said that the West wants to gain control and influence and power over their countries. In my study last year, I made an experiment on how changing the language and the way you justify peace building process to the people on affecting their acceptance toward the peace building, although the results are the same. But you justify it using religious concepts from Islam, using local language, cultural language, and of course, local bodies to implement it. What happened is that a lot more acceptance of the peace building processes was achieved, and the answers were towards trusting the peace building process when it was used, where it was justified through religious terms and was also driven by local bodies. And then I asked them a more direct question of how much do they trust the UN. And 3/4 of the respondents, which were about 500 plus respondents, said that completely they do not trust the UN system to solve problems in their countries. Here I'm talking about Libya, Yemen, and Jordan, who were in my survey. These numbers provide a strong indicator that Arabs in the MENA region react negatively toward the West when it comes to intervening and aiding and helping in peace building in their countries. These views lead to a mass failure of many peace building projects which were derived or imposed by the West on the East over the years. So what's the solution? Pretty direct and simple. Let the local lead the process. Show understanding and support for their culture and tradition and religion, and use them to justify different peace building processes. Moving to Palestine. Palestine as a Middle Eastern country shares quite similar views about peace building, especially even more hostile ones actually, especially because international system didn't really help in solving the conflict, which is ongoing for decades, or put an end to their continuous suffering. Therefore, in my point of view, the only chance for peace building progress to gain acceptance in Palestine is to be led by the people and for the people. However, things are much easier to say than to do. Peace building in Palestine is very complicated for one main reason. Palestine is still occupied. It's still, you are talking now about peace building during an ongoing conflict, not a post-conflict situation. And there is continuous human rights violations by the Israeli occupation on a daily basis since 1948 catastrophe, which is called also Nakba by Palestinians. I will not dig much into what Palestinians as refugees and people under occupation are going through until this moment, but I will just name a few examples to give you a little bit picture of how does it look like to live as a Palestinian in different parts of Palestine and inside Israel. First, if you're a Palestinian living in the West Bank, Then you have only specific roads to go through, to drive through, and there are other roads that only specified for Israeli settlers who are living hundreds meters away from you in an illegal settlements by the law at the heart of the West Bank, breaking your lands and breaking your towns into small like ghettos. And there is also the checkpoints, many checkpoints between the towns and these roads. And this might take for you 3 hours to reach a destination of 20 minutes between two towns. Moreover, you might be shot dead at the checkpoint of a mistaken security alert by the soldier, as it happened to 26-year-old Ahmad Erikat, who was killed last year on the checkpoint while he was heading to his sister's wedding, turning her big day into a big funeral. I think we can check the slide. Yes, we can go on and on. Yeah, so just some pictures of the patient. And then to the checkpoints next. Yes, yeah, just here. Yeah, so we'll have the pictures, please. Yes. These are some examples of photos of the checkpoints in Palestine in the West Bank. Then if you are Palestinian living in the Gaza Strip, by now you have survived 4 brutal attacks. The last one was last May. You might be still alive and lucky enough to have your family and yourself and your friends safe, but you are mentally broken. You are psychologically in need of help and your children need of urgent support, and you cannot avoid all the destruction in every corner in the heavily populated city. And besides of that, you are only having 4 to 6 hour access to electricity a day. If you are a Palestinian living inside Israel, you are viewed as a demographic threat, a second-class citizen by law. You will most likely be living in a highly dense area for non-Jewish Israelis, and you are systematically discriminated against in education, land laws, and even in the buses. If a Palestinian, if a Palestinian West Bank fell in love, for example, with any person outside of Palestine, or even in the Gaza Strip inside Palestine, he or she cannot bring his other family member to live with him. During the last decade, Israel did not allow for a single family unification case for a Palestinian family. On the other side, if you are a Jew living in any part of the world, you just can come in, sit on board, come to the airport, get your nationality together with your family. Finally, if you are a Palestinian, you are suffering from a severe shortage of water. Can we have the picture, please, here? Yeah. And might be allowed to use between 20 to 75 liters a day of water per person, whereas the minimum is 100 liters per person a day as recommended by the World Health Organization. On the other side, Israeli settler, who is just a few hundred meters away from you, is enjoying 369 liters a day. These all are just few examples of what Palestinians are going through, not talking about how harsh it is to live in a refugee camp all of your life. Yeah. Keeping this background in mind, I can sum up the challenges facing local peace building in Palestine. Many peace building processes or projects, such as those supported by US aid or other Western countries, are built on the wrong presumption that Israeli and Palestinians are equal sides of conflict, unintentionally ignoring that one side is the occupier and the other is the occupied. While this presumption might be useful in other cases over history, such as in Northern Ireland, where two sides were sharing the same realities and they have the same hopes for peace building. This is not true for Palestinians, because as Israeli, for example, you do not need a permit to access Jerusalem. But as a Palestinian who has an ID from West Bank or Gaza, you're needing a permit and you will not be able maybe to leave the Gaza Strip. They are asking us to make peace building bridges with Israeli over the borders of 1967. But are you permitted even to access them? You cannot go there because most likely Israeli military are not allowing, are not giving permissions for Palestinians to go there. And on the other side, Israelis are not allowed to go to the West Bank and see the real face of the occupation. As one scholar said once, a bridge cannot be built between pillars of drastically unequal heights. This leads me to my second point, which is what peace building means for each of the two sides. There's a huge difference in the needs of people who are living behind a separation wall which is twice as tall as the Berlin Wall. Can you show the picture of the wall, please? Yes. Which is dividing, just hitting at like the heart of their towns, and some children who are living on one side of the wall cannot access their schools on the other side of the wall. Depriving you of a lot of human rights, including freedom of movement, education, and land and properties and other rights. On the other side, the Israeli person is living freely and can move freely, has all his life needs assisted on a daily basis. So for Palestinians, peace building means taking steps toward changing this drastic situation, toward improving their human rights, toward acknowledging what they are going through, and taking steps toward ending it. For Israeli settlers, maybe, or for Israeli citizens and settlers, maybe the situation is just to set up a dialogue with Palestinians and understand the situation might be a good peace building process. Therefore, projects such as these, which are aiming at joint activities between Israel and Palestinians, although might be important, they are not really touching upon the real problem, thus really don't have a huge impact on the overall peace building process. There is another problem from the Palestinian side, which is the internal conflict between the main political parties, Fatah and Hamas, and the deep division it caused inside the Palestinian society, and even more segregation between the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, which one is controlled by Hamas and the other is controlled by Fatah, all affecting achieving a wide range prospect of our impact for peace building process on the two sides of Palestine. Finally, most of the projects are not touching upon reparation, reconciliation, and admitting and apologizing for the pain that was caused for the Palestinians over the year, stopping it and compensating for it. Palestinians who live their lives as refugees, deprived from basic human rights and still live the situations, are in need of something more than just peaceful joint activities, which are not really solving the problem. Finally, can I say here? Finally, is there any success cases? What is needed to make the process even more successful? On the brighter side, local peace building in Palestine is still an ongoing process, and there are many successful initiatives and the projects ongoing and directed toward, maybe those directed toward improving the livelihood of Palestinian people, improving their knowledge and understanding of peace building, improving their legal systems, developing early warning systems to deal with the life under occupation, and other projects. One example of this is projects towards empowering Palestinian women through training, vocational education, improving skills, supporting startups, supporting their political and leadership skills, help developing early warning systems to help them deal with conflict situations, such as projects funded by Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund and Swedish Kvinna till Kvinna Foundation, just to name a few. Other example, let's stay here, please. Yeah. Other example is the work of local Palestine organization for which I'm working. We are aiming at raising the legal knowledge among Palestinian legal practitioners and ordinary people. We are talking to people in their language and making them understand how international law and the legal system, including the current case before the International Criminal Court, can bring peace to Palestinians. Do you know, by the way, that the International Criminal Court has opened a case in Palestine and the case was brought by Palestinians, but still all the documents and everything related to the case are only in English and French. Nothing is in Arabic, although it's an UN official language. And this makes people really away from what is happening and don't really feel the value. In Law for Palestine, we are translating these records and all the materials related to international law and Palestine into Arabic and provide them as an open resource for free. Another project we lead is the Jurists for Palestine Forum, which has now more than 1,000 members in its first year. In this forum, we are organizing monthly webinars in Arabic on different topics related to international law and Palestine, discussing the terms and their importance. This is besides training courses that aiming at creating legal experts, Palestinian legal experts, advocating for the role of international law in serving peace in Palestine. Knowledge and understanding are keys for functioning toward peace building. We are trying to bring this key to Palestinians. Other important projects of local peace building are those directed toward actually changing the unfair situation for Palestinians, such as occupation and settlements. From anti-settlement campaigns to reopening of Jerusalem institutions, to halting house demolition and exploitations, to mob violence inside Israel and mass arrest of Palestinian civilians. These measures are more necessary than ever in the light of the present crisis. Many human rights organizations on both sides of the conflict are working on these issues, such as Al-Haq and Youth Against Settlements on the Palestinian side, and Breaking the Silence and B'Tselem on Israel's side, just to name a few. So to sum up what I was talking about is that peace building in Palestine is complicated in process. This is due mainly to the ongoing occupation. There are several challenges facing the current peace building attempts at the local level, including not touching upon the main problems of Palestinians, differences in definitions and understanding among the asymmetrical powers to the conflict, and differences in needs and predictions from the peace building process on the different sides of the conflict. What I recommend is that more effort and support should be directed toward organizations and initiatives attempting to change the status quo on the ground. More support should be directed also to projects which are improving the household of Palestinians, improving their skills, and actually make them more feel as valued as humans who have a future and who have life to fight for. And also organizations which are providing with knowledge and tools for challenging the illegal situation and actually building peace. Finally, complete peace is not likely to be achieved without a complete political solution and settlement of the conflict, with Palestinians regaining their rights preserved for them under UN resolutions and decisions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Iman. And even though there are two both similar and very different